When you're on a journey, you'll find sometimes when you start off the journey in the beginning, it's a little easy. You ever start out by climbing a mountain? And you start out it a little easy. But as you go on, you could find it a little difficult, right? And that's what's going to happen for us as we explore this theme. It's going to get a little bit more increasingly difficult and challenging. And I say that to you before because the tendency then will be to close your heart, not to be challenged by it. Because to be challenged by it means that you're opening yourself to change and transformation, which is what the parables are about. So today we want to explore another parable of mercy found in St. Luke's Gospel. And it's the one that deals with compassion for a stranger. I guess you know the parable already, right? The context, of course, is always important. Situate the context in which Jesus gives the parable. Now, this one, he's on the road to Jerusalem, and he encounters a lawyer. Sorry for the lawyers who are in my congregation. And this lawyer comes with what was at the time quite the debated question: what must I do to inherit eternal life? What must I do? And of course that question leads to another, because as Jesus himself says to the man, look, what you read in the law, what is there? And the man says, well, to love God with everything you have, with your mind, with your heart, with your soul, with your strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. And of course, that was also, the second part was also very hotly debated at the time. As the man himself then turns to Jesus and trying to justify himself says, well then, who is my neighbor? Who is this neighbor that I must love? And then Jesus told the parable. And the parable, of course, you probably identified it already, is the parable that we refer to as the parable of the Good Samaritan. As usual, the people, the characters in the parable, in the story, are anonymous. They don't have names. But Jesus, in this particular parable, focuses attention on their religious and ethnic identities. And the context of the parable itself is interesting. This man is on a journey from Jerusalem down to Jericho, and that's actually true. Jerusalem was like 2,000 odd feet above sea level, and Jericho was 1,000 and something feet below sea level. So you literally had to come down to Jericho. There was a movement down, and it was known as one of the most dangerous roads at that time. Rather lonely and could be dangerous. So this man encountered bandits on the road, and he is robbed, he is stripped of everything, including his clothes, it looks like, and he is left half dead, having been beaten up. Sounds familiar? Yeah. We know about that story. And so he's on the road now. At the side of the road, they leave him there dead, or half dead, or almost dead. And then you have the three characters of the story passing along that road: a priest, a Levite, and a Samaritan. And this is where the story goes kind of haywire, because a teacher of the law telling such a story would have it with, yes, the priest, yes, the Levite, but the third character would have been an Israelite. But this story of Jesus doesn't have that. The third person is a Samaritan who is a foreigner. The priest was one who had priestly duties to perform in the temple. In fact, he was on his way from those duties. And you had a roster. You had so many times you did this for the year. Now, if he He saw the man there. If he had only walked across, go near to that man, touch that man or anything like that, he would defile himself and was unable to perform his religious functions. And if he attempted to do it, nobody in around, nobody in looking, and it was found out, and he went and did his religious duties, he was to be excluded from the company of Israel. It was very strong. So he passed by on the other side. It was the safest thing to do. Then the Levite comes along, and he is, of course, of the priestly class. So this one is not one who has priestly duties to perform, but he is of the class. So we have classes of people in every society. And the higher you go up there in the class, however you get there, right? There's certain things that you just don't do. I suppose it's below your caste or class or whatever. So he excuses himself from dealing with this dying man or dead man. Then comes along the third one, who is this foreigner, a Samaritan, who under any almost pain of death would not connect with a Jew. They were sworn enemies. But he is the one who stops. In other words, the two that went before had knowledge, religious knowledge about love of God. They knew about that. And therefore one expected them to act differently. Irrespective of the laws that govern, what could happen? It just means that I would have to miss my routine of functions at the temple, but I will come back again another time. In other words, the man who is dying there needed my attention more than the rules that govern my priestly ministry. But he chose to hold on to his priestly ministry. The one with his class, he again chose to hold on to his class and the way of life he has, and would not be disturbed by this dying man at the side of the road. But this man, who is the foreigner, he chooses to stop. He chooses to stop and to render assistance to this man. Now, that's the story. That's the parable. But it is an interesting one. No details are given in the story of the dying man. He's not described in terms of origins or of his social status. All the attention in this story is on who is taking care of this dying man and paying for him. True compassion, my dear brothers and sisters, leads a person to become involved in doing good and to succeed, despite the cost of time and money, on behalf of the one who is helped. Saint Ambrose of Milan says it well, I think, and I quote, "Mercy, not kinship, makes someone a neighbor." Now, if at the beginning the neighbor is the dying man, isn't that? Was the question that the lawyer asked Jesus, who is my neighbor? And if at the beginning the neighbor is the dying man, in the end, the neighbor is the Samaritan. The dying man is the answer to the lawyer's question, who is my neighbor? But the Samaritan is the answer to Jesus' question. Which of these three do you think proved neighbor to the man? The question is turned around. And so the neighbor becomes not the dying man, but the Samaritan who acts out of compassion. Now, compassion itself is a word in its origins in Greek. It's used in this context as a verb, but it originates from the noun. And that word itself speaks of down in the guts, the bowels, which took in all, the sentiments and everything, but it's a gutty kind of word, if you like. Compassion. And compassion, as I said on the first day, is action-oriented. It's action-oriented. It moves us. It propels us into action. Right? He saw the man lying there. Could have been dead or dying. He had compassion, which meant he moved into action to take care of this man. Compassion moves us into action on behalf of those who need our care. Our care. And it cuts across all the barriers. All the barriers. And that was the point of Jesus' story. The priest, the Levite, did not act with compassion or mercy because they had their rules to follow. When we're going to learn to be compassionate as our Father is compassionate and merciful as our Father is mercy, we have to be prepared to go the extra mile. Isn't that love? Love is what moves us the extra mile, that allows us to turn the other cheek. In gospel language, that's love. You turn the other cheek, you go the extra mile. Love is that which truly allows us to leave self in care for the other. Isn't that? So, if we are going to move on this road, brothers and sisters, of developing, of cultivating in our lives mercy as we learn it from the Father through Jesus the Christ. If we truly understand clearly our mission in this world to mirror the face of our God, who is a God of mercy, then we have to start learning to be compassionate, even as the Samaritan in this story was compassionate. Bring it back to your lives and ask the hard questions. How many times we pass by on the other side? I am not going to try to make anybody feel guilty here, but I think each one of us in our own situations must ask that question. Sometimes we have good reasons. Which of us will stop and give somebody a lift today in the climate in which we live? Long ago we used to do it. But which of us today will stop if somebody asks for a little ride? Or the other way, which of you will go into a vehicle of somebody you don't know who is offering you a ride? How do we minister to people who are in need? Very often, brothers and sisters, all of us, I include myself, all of us, very often our ministry to those in need, where we want to be compassionate, is very often a way of excusing ourselves from real action. Our first thing is to push our hands in the pocket and give money. It's the easy way to go. But how often are we ready and prepared, as the Holy Father Francis by name is calling us to smell like the sheep, to get our hands dirty? Will we pass by on the other side? Or will we learn to be compassionate as our God is compassionate? And so let us come to this table of Eucharist today, once more praying that through the grace of this moment, that this Eucharist will truly help us, heal us, renew us, transform us, and make us disciples of Jesus today who live his way of compassion, of care for those who need our care.